community was formed thousands of years ago, the continental had to undergo many processes of raising and lowering of Earth's crust. The Earth began to separate and tectonic plates appeared. The collision of these tectonic plates created seismic activities. The press of materials went up, which created young mountains, and the subsidence formed valleys and rivers. However, there were many cracks between two continental plates because of this change, and this separation made continents relocate as well as making the earth shake strongly. This phenomenon is usually called earthquake and is one of the most terrible disasters in the world apart from floods, droughts, and tsunami. Earthquakes occur in many areas frequently. These are called seismic belts. These areas usually converge and transform the plate boundaries. They also occur in clusters as the plates shift their position. You also have the circum-Pacific belt, which is where 80% of the earthquakes occur. This includes the regions which are famous for the greatest devastation of life and property. Then there is the Mediterranean belt, which is where 15% of the earthquakes occur. Intraplate and spreading ridge has around 5% of the earthquakes in the world. They are not very strong, but some intraplate earthquakes are quite severe. Seismic belt. The seismic belt is a narrow geographical area on the surface of the earth along which most of the activities related to earthquakes occur. The lithosphere is the outermost layer of the earth and consists of many tectonic plates. The edges of these tectonic plates slide against each other and are the main zones of interpolate earthquakes that result in such seismic belts. There are two main seismic belts in the world. One is the circum-Pacific belt that surrounds the Pacific Ocean, and the other is the alpine belt that extends from the Azores to the Indonesian and Himalayan region through Middle East and the Mediterranean region. There is an oceanic seismic belt found along the ridge of the mid-Atlantic region. Planet Earth and the seismic movements. The tectonic plates of the Earth are always in a state of motion and they interact with each other in a process called plate tectonics. They pull and push against each other as well as cause a lot of grinding movements. Normally, the plates have slow and gradual movements. However, occasionally there is a certain stress that builds and is released in the form of seismic waves. These vibrations result in earthquakes. The sudden movements caused during earthquakes cause the ground to move back and forth and also go up and down and also side to side. The entire process is a part of the intricate fault system which stretches for more than 800 miles and at least around 10 miles down to the bottom of the earth. Many earthquakes occur but are not even felt by us. Earthquakes thus are a result of continuous movements when rocks, plates or parts of the earth break under stress, thus creating a shock wave which sends a ripple effect. Many of the earthquakes are not even noticed by the people on the planet. Scientific instruments help to detect the quakes and people across the world feel only 1/4 of the intensity that actually occurred. A magnitude of 8 quakes occur every year across the earth, but the severe ones cause destruction to land and property and occurs once in every 5 years. These quakes destroy cities and burst dams and also cause innumerable volcanic eruptions. This results in landslides and also produces huge sea waves. Most earthquakes occur along the crust of the earth and are called faults. Most of the faults are seen lying along the border of the major plates with huge slabs of rocks making up the lithosphere of the earth. Some earthquakes occur a little away from the plate boundaries, and these happen when there is sufficient buildup of stress. The largest quake belt is witness to around 80% of the trembles or earthquakes and is where the plates carrying the Pacific Ocean come in contact. There are many active zones here, and one is anticipating such activities in the near future. You have the Intermountain Seismic Belt, which is a region of earthquake across the north-south direction through the Intermountain West through Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming. In short, earthquakes occur at any point of time and catch people unaware. However, if one knows about earthquake, it would be an easier perspective to take care of the world. Naturally, there are innumerable regions where there could be an earthquake. However, the very fact that it is not still known how to determine the occurrence of earthquakes makes the entire process very difficult to handle at times. Earthquakes could be produced due to various causes. Some of them are natural and the others are situational. Seismic belts are areas where the occurrence of earthquakes is frequent and where one finds such recurrences very often. There are many ways to reduce earthquake disasters. 1. By identifying earthquake belts. It is very important to know the areas where the earth belts occur. 2. By finding out the distribution of the earthquake belts, we can predict the areas where earthquake will come. 3. By calculating the intensity of the earthquake so that we will have a unique solution. This would ensure that there is a continuous monitoring of the entire process. 4. By checking places where earthquake belts belong to in order to deal with it immediately. Once we know this, the possibility of occurrence can be handled easily. The earthquake has a large influence to living and activities of human. The devastation of earthquake depends on the level and intensity. So, a lot of scientists have been trying to find methods to reduce disasters of earthquake by looking for areas where earthquake frequently occur, often called earthquake belt, and predict levels as well as paths. Scientists are constantly in the process of understanding seismic belts and are trying to arrive at a solution with the best options to have a good solution to this problem. In this chapter, we will study the distribution of earthquake belt and the relationship between it with others, seismic activity, as well as places where earthquake appears frequently. It will also detail how to find out the regions and how they affect the chances of occurrences of earthquakes quite naturally. Earthquake and earthquake belts. There are many people who always wonder that where does earthquake come from? They are left wondering and there is another earthquake that occurs. Scientists and researchers were trying to find causes of forming of earthquake because they really wanted to find reasonable solutions to prevent disasters from affecting people's lives seriously. Earthquake. It is the result of sudden explosion inside Earth's crust and creates seismic waves. Earthquake appears because of fractured parts of Earth's crust or planets which are made of solid. However, we must realize that the ground always moves. An earthquake will be able to occur if the changes are higher than the tolerance of the Earth's crust. And the areas where earthquakes appear frequently, the scientists and geographers call them by a regular name earthquake belts. Earthquake belt. Most of the seismic events occur at the boundaries of tectonic plates, is one of the part of the Earth's lithosphere. The place where tectonic plates are usually broken will create earthquakes, and we call this phenomenon an earthquake belt. When you understand the definition of earthquake, we will go into analysis and research seismic activities in the next section so that we can know exactly the characteristics of earthquakes as well as the influence of it to our lives. Thus, we will find the unique solutions to prevent disastrous earthquake from destroying property and human. Characteristics of an earthquake. Earthquakes occur on the earth every day, but all of them cause a little movement without terrible damage or serious influence. However, strong earthquakes can destroy everything and lead to death in many ways. Earthquake is the cause of landslides, tsunami, cracked ground, high tide, broken dikes, and fire. According to the study of geographers and scientists, most of the earthquakes with movement of ground will bring the most serious damage. Some conditions, there are many little earthquakes that occur before or after a major earthquake, and we call them by aftershocks. The capacity of earthquake is spread over large areas. The devastation of it is very horrible and give terrible consequences to people's lives. Scientists are able to define points from where seismic waves begin. These points are called focal. The projection of these points on the surface is called epicenter. There are many earthquakes which occur beneath the ocean. They will create tsunami or landslides of the sea and make seabed deform. There are 4 seismic waves which create at the same time, but they have different speed and they are recorded by consecutive positions such as P wave, S wave, love wave, and the last one is Rayleigh wave. Some observations that we can make to know that the earthquake is occurring are: the ground begins to shake slightly. If these shakes have moderate levels, we can ignore it immediately. However, those shakes are too strong and become more terrible, we have to understand that the earthquake begins to occur. We can observe animals around us. They will disappear or hide somewhere when the earthquake begins. The tides and the waves become more intense before the earthquake comes. The scientists and researchers have been trying to define characters of earthquake clearly so that they can predict where earthquakes will occur and also can prevent disasters from stealing people's lives. That is the reason why we need to know all about an earthquake belt. Distribution of earthquake belts. The areas where earthquake belts appear mean that the Earth's crust is broken seriously. Earthquake belts usually distribute at the Pacific, the Mediterranean, the west coast of North America and South America, east of Africa, and some countries of East Asia. Movements of tectonic plates to separate the continents, it created many long cracks and formed continuous earthquakes in the above areas. That is a reason why earthquake belts appear. According to the study of the scientists, places where earthquake occurs is near the volcano and young mountains. So, what is the relationship between an earthquake belt with young mountains and volcanoes? Earthquake belts, young mountains, and volcanoes are located on the place where there is exposure to tectonic plates. When tectonic plates are separated, it will not only cause earthquake but also volcano. While those plates collide together, it also forms fold mountains and young mountains. The collision of the continental plates formed young mountains in the above areas, and most of these places are home of earthquake belts and volcanoes. Intensity of earthquakes. The scientists use seismic monitor to define the intensity of an earthquake, and the unit is measured by Richter. Here are the scales of Richter and their influence. 1 to 2 Richter. We cannot recognize whether an earthquake occurs or not. 2 to 4 Richter. We can recognize, but it will not damage anything. 4 to 5 Richter. The ground shakes slightly with mild explosion and it will not damage anything. 5 to 6 Richter. The buildings shake strongly. Some works are cracked. 6 to 8 Richter. Very strong. It will destroy most of the constructions and create large cracks and subsidence on the ground. 8 to 9 Richter. Extremely strong. It damages all things at the city or town and very large cracks appear. Greater than 9 Richter. They rarely occur. Greater than 10 Richter. They are extremely rare to occur. Based on the scale of the Richter, the scientists and geographers identify the levels of devastation and they can give reasonable solution to prevent earthquakes from damaging people's lives easily. According to the history of the world, there is a rare case of occurrence of earthquake with greater than 10 Richter. Annually, there are more than 5 serious earthquakes which occur all over the world. The most recent earthquake occurred in Japan with the intensity of 7.1 Richter. It plunged nearly all of the areas in Fukushima, Japan. It is considered as the most terrible and the worst earthquake which occurred in the 21st century. Earthquake belts in India. More than 59% areas of India lie on the Himalayan belt, where it is considered as the cradle of terrible earthquakes and earthquake belts. Thus, India is one of the 4 countries where people's lives are damaged and property destruction seriously takes place due to earthquake every year. Earthquakes in India. According to statistics, in more than 20 years, India has experienced more than 10 major earthquakes and nearly 20,000 deaths. And following calculation of the World Bank and the United Nations, they estimate 200 million residents who will face the storms and worst earthquakes in 2050. The earthquake regions of India are divided into 4 seismic areas. Each area shows the influence of the earthquake in that place and helps the scientists to give reasonable solutions for each one. In fact, the earthquakes will change seismic areas. For example, in Koyna, where earthquake occurred in 1967, and it changed the partition table of the earthquake, the scientists listed Koina in 4 zones where major earthquakes occur frequently. Appearance of earthquake in Killarney in 1993 led to change the partition table of the earthquake again. Low risk areas or seismic areas in Zone 1 are combined with seismic areas in Zone 2, and some parts of the Deccan and Indian Peninsula are listed in Zone 3. That is, the zone is known as high risk areas. Seismic risks. The recent study shows that the risk of seismic activities is increasing in these zones. Some zones were listed in low risk areas where will be established again and considered as very dangerous seismic areas or vice versa. The development of seismic risks will occur when urbanization activities increase and affect reconstruction areas as well as business developments and globalization economy in India. The increasing use of modern equipments and high technology in industries and services will destroy structures of the environment and the ground. This influence will collapse infrastructures and major earthquakes will occur in Delhi or Mumbai. The Ring of Fire, also known as the Circum-Pacific Belt, is a long horseshoe-shaped active belt and is the epicenter of earthquakes. Tectonic plate boundaries border the Pacific Basin, and the belt is a part of a chain of islands like New Hebrides, Tonga, and has the Indonesian archipelago along with the Kuril Islands, Japan, Philippines, and the Aleutians. Volcanoes are connected with the belt, and so they are called the Ring of Fire. There are groups of ocean troughs which border the belt on the side of the oceans, and there are many continental land masses found behind. Most of the earthquakes in the world occurred in this Ring of Fire. The Ring of Fire surrounds many tectonic plates, and this includes the huge Pacific region and the Juan de Fuca, Nazca plates, as well as Cuckoos. Most of the plates are in a continuous process of subducting below the continental plates. The Pacific plate is in a continuous process of sliding past the North American plate at the intersections of the plates called the transform faults. Most of the volcanic events and the earthquakes occur within the Ring of Fire. For example, the eruptions of the Mount Tambora, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Ruiz are all examples of such eruptions in the Ring of Fire. Earthquakes over a period of time have been occurring in and around the Ring of Fire. Ideally, scientists would love to predict earthquakes accurately with enough time so that everyone can be prepared to gear themselves up for it. However, this is not entirely possible always due to natural, environmental, and personal problems. Businesses would love to have time to implement their plans. However, this is how it is for earthquakes always. Scientists are also not able to find out when an earthquake might occur. So, preparations are always last-minute plans for an earthquake disaster. The best way of dealing with such problems is to live in a country suffering from earthquake and understand the day-to-day problems in handling such cases. Conclusion. After finishing this course, the student will know the reasons why earthquakes occur as well as define the places where they appear frequently. This chapter helps you to have a perfect point of view of changes of seismic activities, the relationship, and an influence to people living. The earth always changes. The continents are also expanded or shrunk, and the decompositions create cracks and earthquakes appear. Thus, people need to fix their mistakes, which they have made with Mother Nature for a very long time. The way we treat the earth, calamities will increase. Don't destroy Mother Nature and environment anymore. You will kill yourselves. Our actions will be reflected through the intensity and the level of disasters. If we continue to ignore these changes of the earth, it will create global influence and will destroy the human race when the continents are separated. Our chapter will be summarized by some notices. Earthquake is a cause of seismic movements, changes of climate, and the movements of continents. Earthquake belts have a close relationship with volcano and young mountains. The distribution of earthquake belts will let us define places where earthquake occurs frequently. We can realize what we need to do so that we can prevent the earth from disasters of the earthquake.